Hello, my name is Lindsay Weirich, and today we're going to look at how to blend colored pencils using Derwent Chromaflow colored pencils. These come in a set of 24, so it's a limited palette. So it's really important you learn how to blend them if you want to get a rich arrangement of colors. We're going to start by making a color wheel, and I've just simply drawn a circle on a piece of drawing paper. This is just regular plain drawing paper. Now I am putting on a layer of yellow, and my aim is to cover at least 1/3 of this. Think of it kind of like a pie that you want to slice up into 3 equal pieces. Try to keep an even coating of pencil as you work. Now I'm picking up magenta, which is our primary red, and I am laying down a thin layer of that, overlapping part of the yellow. Again, you want to keep a thin, even layer because if you color too firmly, you're going to fill in the tooth and then you won't be able to add more layers on top. Now I'm going in with blue and I'll be overlapping the magenta and the yellow. You can kind of start to see those colors mix where they overlap one another. Now we're going to start adding more layers, and I like to begin with the yellow because you really can't go too hard with the yellow because it's such a light value. So even if you color a little too firmly, it's not going to be difficult to blend out with your other colors. You can see when I go back in with the magenta, I reduce my pressure as I go over the yellow area because I don't want to lay down too much color, and then I go back in with the yellow and start blending that out. Now that technique, once we have a lot of pigment on the paper and we're using some more pressure with our hands, that's called burnishing, and that smooths out the paper and it really mixes those colors together. It's a wonderful technique, but you want to make sure when you do that technique, when you're adding a lot of pressure, you're doing that at the end because you're not going to be able to layer on top of that burnished layer very easily. So I like to go really light with my layers to start off, and when I'm pretty happy with how my colors look, then I'll go in with some more pressure. I think this is such a fun way to get to know your pencils because you're going to see what they can do and you're going to see what sort of mixes you can make. Plus, because you're working with a limited palette, you are going to learn so much more about color theory doing this than having a set of 100 pencils with every color you can imagine. It's always a good idea to start with a smaller set. That way you can learn what you can do. Now look at the center, how we have that kind of neutralized brown-black color. That's what happens when you mix all 3 primaries together. They completely neutralize themselves and they make that nice dark tone. Another useful thing to try is making tints, and that's when you take a color and you add white to it. So I'm going to start off with a really light coating of the magenta. I'm using very little pressure, but since it is a dark color, it does come out pretty darkly. And I'm going to gradiate that a little bit, having a little darker on one end than the other. Now I'm going to pick up the white pencil and color firmly over that to mix the colors together. And you can see how we get a more pastel tone of the pencil. Now you can take your time and do up more layers, but this is just to give you an example of the gradients you can get just from one single color plus white. It's a wonderful thing to practice. Here we can add a ring of white over our blended circle to see what a tint of these colors would look like. Now a tint is any color plus white. A shade is any color plus black. I don't like to use black to shade my colors or to create shades with. What I'd rather do is actually look at my colors and choose a color opposite it from the color wheel to create a shadow. So for instance, if I was painting a lemon, I would look across the color wheel, which would take me over to purple, and I would use a purple colored pencil to shade that, and it would give me a much more natural look. So keep that in mind as you're choosing colors for your colored pencil artwork. Another technique I find really useful is mixing neutrals or skin tones. And what I'll do is, especially with a limited selection of pencils like we have with the Derwent Chromaflow range, I will choose the earth tones, the browns, the earthy yellows, the earthy reds and pinks, and I will just start overlapping them and seeing what they create. This will give you a great idea about what colors blend really smoothly. You'll notice that some colors are just softer than others, blend a little creamier than others, and it will give you a nice idea of how a new set of pencils will feel. So not only is it a great way to learn how your colors mix and blend, it's also a really great way to get to know a new set of pencils and the variety of color that you can get with them. Now, something that I will often do is blend out with white like we did with our earlier different practices that we did. So after you have laid down a bunch of colors, if they feel too streaky or too dark or too translucent, you can go over with with a layer of white and get more of a creamy look. This set also has a salmon pink, which is a really, really soft, warm pink that doesn't really lean too red. So that's a really nice color for blending out too and avoiding a really white haze over your work. Now with wax-based pencils, one of the components of the pencil is wax. So you can get this kind of milky haze over your work. And if that happens, it's a really simple fix. All you have to do is buff over it with I use a tissue, just a regular like non-lotion tissue or piece of cotton, and you will get a really nice sheen to that. You do have to be careful. It can add a bit of a shine to your work, but I find it works really well. Also, using fixative will help you in that. Just spray a little bit of workable fixative or even final fixative, and it usually will dissolve any of the wax bloom that you have there. But even after you've put the white on there, you can still go in and add more color if you feel like you want to pump it up a little bit, get a little bit more rosiness to it. It's a really just fun technique to try. One of the most useful techniques you are going to learn for colored pencil mixing is making ombre or gradients. We're going to start off with sun yellow and create a really light coating over an entire block here in my swatch sheet. You want to go for a nice even coating, and then you can actually start to add a little bit more color towards the top and fade it out as you go down further in the swatch. And I just used a swatch stamp from Waffle Flower, but you could easily draw some rectangles with a pen. It would be just fine. I'm going in with a couple more layers of the yellow, making each layer a little bit shorter. So I have more color at the top and less at the bottom. So even just with this one color, I have created a gradient, but we're going to be able to get a more complex gradient by adding some other colors. Now using the darkest color in my blend, I'm using Flame. I'm going to start at the bottom of my swatch where I don't have a lot of the yellow, and I am going to, using little circles, start with a kind of concentrated color and then feather it out as I work up. So I'm starting with a little more concentration and getting lighter as I go up the swatch, and I'll go up about 2/3 of the swatch. And now I'm going to use my medium value amber gold to color in the middle and bring those two colors together. Now you could use more layers and just use that orange and that brighter yellow to make a gradient. But if you do have a transitionary color like a medium value, that will really help in getting that nice smooth blend you desire. This is a really useful technique, and you should be able to find enough colors in a set of 24 to create many blends like this. Sometimes you want to make an ombre of colors that aren't close to each other on the color wheel, like I'm going to do here. I wanted to blend turquoise green into lilac, so that green going to a purple, if I were to overlap those, I would get mud. So I want to make sure that they don't touch each other, and I use an in-between color. So I'm starting off with the turquoise green on one end, and I am just putting on a light layer, feathering it out to nothing in the center, making sure I have more pigment at the top, and then I'm going to add lilac at the bottom, again with more pigment at the bottom and feathering it out to nothing in the middle. And after I've got those colors down, I will go in with light blue. And I chose light blue because light blue will blend well into turquoise green. It will also blend well into lilac without making mud. And that's what I want to happen here. I want to have a nice, subtle, transitioned blend that is nice and clean and bright. Keep in mind, if you're not satisfied with your blend, you can keep repeating those layers until you get exactly the blend you want. I'm going back in with my turquoise green to fill in the tooth and make sure I get a nice smooth transition. And then I can go back in with my purple as well, my lilac color, to make sure that I've got that as nice and rich as I want. Also, sharpening your pencil can help get into those nooks and crannies of your paper, so just keep that in mind. Don't work the pencil down to nubs. You will want to keep a sharp point for best results. I hope this video gave you the tools, tips, and techniques you need to create a rainbow of colors with your Derwent Chromaflow pencils. I'll have some examples here on different blends that you can make. Feel free to pause the video and jot down those color numbers if you would like to try some of these blends at home. But the most important thing is that you experiment and have fun with your art supplies. That's how you'll know what they'll do, and that's how you can get the best results from them. Thank you so much for watching. Please give me a thumbs up if you found this video helpful. Until next time, happy crafting!